see this today? Coming in for a landing, and look what the pilot suddenly saw crossing right in front of them on the runway there, a private jet that, according to the FAA, was not supposed to be there. Again, this keeps happening. So far in 2025, there have been 5 crashes, accidents, near misses. A Delta plane had a cabin filled with smoke yesterday, and the media wants to blame all of this on Donald Trump and Doge cuts, meaning 37 days into his second term. And all of this is Donald Trump's fault, which is just completely not true. This is Joe Biden's fault. This is Mayor Pete's fault. He was transportation secretary for 4 years. 4 years of bad policies, and the chickens are finally coming home to roost. We've also got numbers to back up that none of this has anything to do with Donald Trump. The FAA has only cut 352 jobs out of more than 46,000, and all of them, every single one, was a new hire on probation. Not a single air traffic controller was let go, meaning none of this really has anything to do with Donald Trump. Okay, we begin tonight with something that's a little bit different. I've always been of the mindset that you don't knock someone when they're down, and I try not to. But there are times when the temptation is absolutely overwhelming. And I've heard from many of you. I heard from you at CPAC. I've gotten letters, emails, asking me to stop talking about Joe Biden so much. And I understand that. We've got a new president now, and I get that people don't want to hear about Joe Biden every single night. I don't want to hear about Joe Biden anymore. I get that. But I'm not doing it because I don't have anything else to say. It's the exact opposite. I bring up Joe Biden to point out what something was like for all of us when Joe Biden was president compared to what that same thing might be like right now under Donald Trump. I lay it out, and then I let you decide at home. For example, on Joe Biden's first day in office 4 years ago, he canceled construction of the Keystone pipeline. It got some attention at the time. According to the Department of Energy, over 59,000 Americans lost their jobs as a direct result of that decision. And I don't remember any outrage from the media or the White House when Joe Biden suddenly fired thousands of Americans.
When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
So there was no outrage 4 years ago, but there is today. The media can't seem to understand why so many perfectly good government employees were asked to send an email to describe what they accomplished at work last week. According to the Associated Press, thousands of federal workers got an email on Saturday asking them to explain what they did last week or face consequences. Workers were given little more than 48 hours to explain what they accomplished over the last week, sparking confusion across key agencies. That was all spin. In reality, Elon Musk asked federal employees for 5 bullet points describing what they did at work last week. But for many of them, that was just too much to bear.
I felt absolutely infuriated getting this email with a demand within 48 hours to provide a response. This is clearly an attempt from Elon Musk to harass and bully and intimidate the federal workforce, which is part of his broader plan to gut the federal workforce and privatize public sector services to ensure that corporations like his own can get more profit.
Let's just say I didn't meet anybody like that at CPAC last week. Overreaction of the century here. I don't get why this was so hard for so many people, thousands of people. Did the email arrive on a Saturday? Yes. Is it a pain? Yes. But if you can't take 10 minutes to put together 5 bullet points describing what you did at work last week, your job probably isn't that important. And what nobody else is pointing out is that this was all just an exercise. There is no possible way to read hundreds of thousands of emails, even if AI does it, meaning you could essentially write whatever you want, send the email, check the box, and move on with your Saturday. But according to Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, that was just too much to ask. A United States senator tweeting, "This is the ultimate dick boss move from Elon Musk, except he isn't even the boss, he's just a dick." What Tina Smith doesn't seem to get, because she's been in politics her entire life, is that a lot of people work for years, for decades, for a dick boss. For a lot of people, that's just part of life. And guess what? You get up, you show up, you do your job, you go home. But once again, Democrats don't seem to get that the Donald Trump honeymoon is really just beginning. Forget about everything you've heard that things are not going well for Donald Trump. Right now, according to a poll out a day ago, he's got a 52% approval rating. Joe Biden had that in his first month, never had it again. According to a new Harvard-Harris poll, 81% of Americans support deporting illegal immigrants who have committed crimes. 81% of Americans. 81% of Americans wouldn't agree that the sky is blue. Some would say whitish, some would say greenish, some would say dark blue, navy, whatever. 81% wouldn't agree that it's just plain blue. The poll also found that 72% of Americans support the existence of a government agency focused on finding government waste. Hello, Doge. You probably also didn't hear that the Democratic Party now has the lowest approval rating they've ever had in history. It's at 36% right now. That's the lowest it's ever been since polling began 100 years ago. Meaning Democrats right now, on this day, in February 2025, have never been more unpopular. MSNBC and CNN are also definitely not talking about a Quinnipiac poll out this morning. Democrats in Congress right now have their lowest approval rating in history since polling began at 21%. On the other side of that, Republicans currently are at the highest they've ever been. So what do Democrats do when faced with this brand new reality that nothing's going their way? They give Kamala Harris an award over the weekend, and instead of pushing her party in a new direction, she did what she's always done. She tried to scare people about Donald Trump.
And while we have no illusions about what we are up against in this chapter in our American story, this chapter will be written not simply by whoever occupies the Oval Office, nor by the wealthiest among us. The American story will be written by you, written by us, by we the people.
I also don't like to knock people for what they wear, but I'll just say that was the wrong outfit for that particular event over the weekend. Democrats, for whatever reason, still think Kamala Harris matters. And if it's not Kamala as their candidate in 4 years, maybe it'll be Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, the New York Times, writing a glowing piece about Murphy. Until you get to paragraph 7 and realize that because of Donald Trump, we might not have an election in 4 years. Did you hear about this? Mr. Murphy insists he's not doing all of this to set up a run for president, in part because he thinks there might not even be a race to enter in 4 years. That's what people are reading in the New York Times. Do you see the disconnect that I'm trying to reference here? People are reading that Donald Trump is going to cancel an election in 4 years that he isn't even running in. And if it's not Kamala or Chris Murphy, maybe it'll be Bernie Sanders in 4 years when he's 87 years old. That sounds like a great age to run for president, doesn't it? And I say that because Bernie Sanders is already running. He had a speaking engagement in Nebraska over the weekend. He was in Iowa yesterday. He's campaigning today. But if it's not Bernie in 4 years, maybe it'll be the governor of Wisconsin, who just yesterday decided it was appropriate to include in a budget bill name changes. The name of mother will now be, in his state, inseminated person, and father will now be natural parent. It says ad lib in the prompter, so I'm going to do that. Let's say you were a little kid and you wanted to call Billy and see if he wanted to come over to play street hockey in the driveway or something like that. Your mom would say, well, you better talk to Billy and I'll talk to his mom and make sure that's okay. What she would never say is, well, you better talk to Billy and I'll talk to his inseminated person and make sure that's okay. Inseminated person. Inseminated person. This man on your screen wants that to be what we call mom. Inseminated person. I'm going to call my inseminated person after the broadcast. I guarantee she's watching right now, and I guarantee she's laughing. But I don't really care what Democrats say anymore, or the rest of the media. None of it really matters. They can talk about us now. I'm done talking about what someone just said over on CNN. The only reason those networks still exist is because we give them oxygen. Someone says something on CNN or MSNBC, and we play clips of it on Newsmax. Fox does the same thing. I'm done with that. because it's not news. Although I'm going to make one exception right now. Joy Reid just lost her job over at MSNBC. My goodness, this is long overdue. And the fact of the matter that she just never changed anything. So racist, so wildly out of control. And they let her get away with it. She was fired for two reasons. The first, nobody was watching her show. The second, she made it her mission to divide America every single night by making everything, every topic, every segment about race.
Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state. And this will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, you know, God bless Shannon Watts, who has tried to have that conversation.
There's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears.
They can drive out the brown people and the black and Asian people, or just sink them into the same apartheid they've created in Texas.
MSNBC fired Joy Reid because she spent years lying to her audience about basic information. I won't do that. I'll try not to do that. And you just can't lie to people on a daily basis and expect them to continue to watch you. Eventually, people are going to go somewhere else for their news. But it happens all the time in this industry. And we all, to some extent, picked up the collective biases of the people around us. I get that. And people like Joy Reid are part of the reason that this country is so divided.
But I've been through every emotion from, anger, rage, disappointment, hurt, feeling that, guilt, that I let my team lose their jobs. My show had value. And that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry.
Okay, her show did not have a lot of value, certainly not to the network, certainly not to the network's bottom line. Everything is not about race. She said that America was founded in 1619. America was founded in 1776, the year before the Pilgrims landed. That's when she wanted America to be founded. She also was very concerned about Gaza. But you can't be concerned about Gaza unless you're concerned about Israel first, because they were the ones that were attacked on October the 7th. It wasn't the other way around. And this entire cycle has actually been studied scientifically by something called the Asch conformity experiment, where 5 test subjects were brought into a room. So 4 of them were fake test subjects. 1 of them was real. And they were all shown a number of lines, where one of the lines was clearly, obviously longer than the other lines. And every single time the group agreed until the 4 fake test subjects all disagreed on which line was the longest. And ultimately, the real test subject changed his vote as well. Take a look.
Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white T-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. On the 3rd trial, something happens.
2.
2.
2. 2. 2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
There it is right there. What you just saw is essentially the viewing experience for anybody watching MSNBC and CNN over the last several years. People tune in thinking they've got a great beat on things, thinking they know politics, until over time, they're tricked into believing something that's just not true, like the border is closed, or that Joe Biden is cogent, or that Donald Trump is actually a Nazi. In 2016, there was this spread between how the media covered Donald Trump and how millions of people actually viewed the president. 9 years later, guess what? Absolutely nothing has changed. They haven't evolved at all to the point where they would rather lose their jobs than bend just a little bit to the center, to the point where names that once mattered in the liberal media don't matter at all anymore. Brian Stelter, Nora O'Donnell, Margaret Brennan, Don Lemon, Jim Acosta, Chris Matthews, now Joy Reid. And just yesterday, you can add Lester Holt to that list as well. They join this growing list of people who have not been honest with Americans for so long that now they're paying the price. In November, they all bet on Kamala Harris, the wrong horse in the presidential election. If Kamala won, all the lies would continue for another 4 years. They never thought for a second that Donald Trump was going to win the election. The people that cover politics for a living never considered once that DJT might win on November the 5th. He did. And that tells you everything you need to know about who these people are. And on that note, I leave you with the final network sign-off of one of the great racists who ever worked in this business.
I just love running into y'all in the airport, on these streets, and on social media. I could not love or appreciate you more. Thank you, thank you, thank you for holding us down. Almost 5 years, we are a toddler, and we out in these streets in this world, and we are not going to stop. That is tonight's ReidOut.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.